Hey folks, this is Shaen Greer, co-owner and co-publisher of Campaigns and Elections, back for another video interview, this time with Dave Lewis of SnailWorks, who are sponsoring this video. And I guess straight out of the gates, Dave, first question has to be, give a bit of context to SnailWorks and their role in the industry.
Sure. Thanks, Shane. It's really what we do is track mail. For a lot of different organizations and a lot of political campaigns, when they send mail out, we track it through the Postal Service. We let people know, A, when their mail's been put in the mail, in other words, when their vendors have mailed it, and then B, when it gets delivered. So they can use that to try to, first of all, just know the mailing is going all right and to try to coordinate other things with the mail as it gets delivered.
Yeah. And when you have this kind of interesting, I was going to say bird's eye view, but also like a microscope view of mail delivery stats. Give us a sense of how the Postal Service is performing.
Not great right now. It is a little bit
Oh no.
concerned. A couple of years ago, during the height of COVID, when the first winter through COVID, they got buried in packages because so much went to e-commerce. And since then, they dug out of that problem, but they seem to sort of have gotten into it again a little bit this year. In some of their facilities, it's taking twice as long as usual for mail to get delivered. So it's not. We're concerned. It's worse this year than it was last year, and last year it was worse than it was the year before. So it's kind of on a downhill slope. It's not dramatic, but we don't like to see it go that direction.
What does that mean for political mailers?
It means for political mailers, they want to keep an eye on that, on delivery and any stats they can get as the elections approach, and they want to make sure that they do allow enough time for mail to get delivered, and allow a few more days than you might have in previous elections. And a little self-serving, but it's a good idea to track the mail too to make sure it's being delivered. It really
You're getting where it's
important on that kind of mail.
Based on everything you kind of see in terms of stats coming through and various kind of performance metrics, what advice do you give to political mailers when it comes to I don't know, sizing of mail pieces? I've heard the USPS talk a lot about informed delivery. Actually, it's something that we use in our own household. What's the kind of the advice that you would give to your everyday political mailing firm?
Oh, sure. And one of the things you mentioned there is the size of the mail piece. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but the Postal Service sort of looks at mail as either letters or flats, and letters all run through machines, and they really they're easy to track. They get delivered pretty effectively because they're easier for the Postal Service to handle. Whereas flats are a little tougher. Now, when I say letter, it's just the size of the piece. So, for example, if you're looking at a postcard or a self-mailer, you can be 6 by 11 inches and it's still considered a letter. So you still get some territory. I know a lot of political mailers they like a big piece of mail, but there's a little bit of risk in that. It costs more, and more than that, delivery is a little more uncertain. Informed delivery is kind of a cool product. Hopefully most of the people listening do it at home, subscribe to it, which is when an image of the mail piece is sent to the consumer. And candidates or campaigns, they can also they can replace that piece of that black and white picture of the mail piece with a color ad, essentially, that sort of reflects that. Get a picture of the candidate. All candidates like having a nice color picture of themselves appear wherever they can, as well as you get a link there so you can link to the candidate's website for volunteers or fundraising or whatever it may be, right from that email that comes from the Postal Service.
I want to talk about just sort of pivoting a little bit to voting in 2024. We know that campaigns on both sides, that they placed a lot of emphasis on this for a long time, certainly greater emphasis on it during and post-COVID, but voting by mail, voting early, that relies on USPS and delivery. Do you anticipate any problems there? Is there any specific advice you would give to folks who are really trying to coordinate vote by mail efforts?
It's anything that's going through the Postal Service right now is a little bit of a concern. In the last election, they really did do a great job of delivering ballots on time. As I said, we've seen some degradation of service. So again, we're hoping that the voting authorities will give people plenty of time. And even though technically you can send in absentee ballots at the end, it's better for campaigns, I think, to try to push for early voting where they can, and make sure that people aren't waiting till the last minute if they are to vote in person, not to vote by mail at that point, because we're a little nervous about delivery as elections approach.
And flipping the script a little bit, I mean, one of the nice things about tracking, and we see this on the campaign side, say, for example, with their digital vendors, they're able to ask really intelligent questions that speaks to, I'm hiring you as the vendor, in this case, a direct mail vendor, and they know the questions to ask to determine if they're getting the results they want. With this, what are the kind of tracking that questions that folks should be asking their political mailers, and in turn, the kind of questions that political mailing firms should be asking folks like yourselves for to ensure that they're getting the best results from their mail, from their campaigns?
Sure. First of all, I think most campaigns, or many of them, are run by agencies or by consultants that may manage a lot of campaigns. That's where I think we have a lot of value for some of them, to help them coordinate all those, to make sure that, because it's not unusual for one consultant to have 10 campaigns and 10 different vendors. And you can imagine it gets a little complex when you start splitting up campaigns between the vendors. So have some tool to keep that in place. And again, we can help with that. Make sure that you are, keeping an eye on service. We run, actually, on our LinkedIn page, every Monday we run a mail traffic report where we kind of indicate the trouble areas. So use resources like that to look ahead, to look forward. And again, make sure that your vendors, if you're hiring mailing vendors, that they're aware of the challenges and the circumstances that may face them with the postal delays and things like that.
And it's worth mentioning as well. I'm on LinkedIn a lot, I think, as a lot of us are, and I'm pretty sure I see on a pretty weekly basis you all putting out some direct mail stats. I know I've shared a few of those myself. So just off script, but total kind of recommendation from me. Do follow there as well, because it's a great insight into. It's a bit of a black box, right? If you don't have that data, you don't know what's going on.
The Postal Service doesn't share a lot of information on delivery stats. They show very basic, but they don't really share a lot. And so it is kind of a view into that box. We have a lot of. I know we have a number of the commissioners on the Postal Regulatory Commission who read that every week. They kind of keep an eye on it because it's easier to get it from us than it is from the Postal Service.
Well, that's saying something. Listen, Dave Lewis of SnailWorks, thank you very, very much for joining us today. And again, if you want to check out SnailWorks, there will be a link here somewhere. So please do. And of course, follow them on LinkedIn. But Dave, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Shaen.